What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou with the Duran, and I have with me Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, and today we're going to be talking about the Carter Page FISA warrant. Okay, Alexander, this is a big topic and there's a lot to discuss. Let's see how we get through this, because it reminds me of that saying, the tangled web we weave when we practice deceit. I don't know if I'm getting that saying right, but it's something like that.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it's
okay.
like.
Yeah. That's what it's like. And this is a tangled web of deceit that has been spun by Hillary Clinton, by the DNC, by Obama, by the deep state. It's incredible what's out there. But basically we have the FISA warrant, heavily redacted, about 400 pages. The redacted part is probably only 5 pages. I guess when you get rid of all the redactions, you could get about 5 pages of meat that you can dig into. Now, I'm just going to ask you a very broad question, and you can expand with it whichever way you want and whichever way you want to take it. Do you believe, after looking at this FISA warrant, after examining the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page text messages, after seeing all the evidence that's been leaked and been in the press over the past 2 years, do you think this was one big hoax, the whole Russia-Trump collusion? I mean, do you think this is the DNC, Hillary Clinton, the deep state, just pulling the biggest hoax in the history of the United States on the American people and on the world?
Well, that's a simple question, which, like some simple questions, demands a complex answer. Can I turn to the FISA warrant first? Because, yes, it is absolutely true that most of it is redacted. But we have a huge advantage in that certain people have written about this FISA warrant, who have seen it, and they've seen the unredacted. They've seen the complete, clean version of it. And these were Trey Gowdy, Nunes, the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. And if you take your mind back a couple of months, they produced a memo. I think people may remember all the talk about, release the memo. And it was eventually released. The memo that the Republican majority of the House Intelligence Committee produced, in which they made certain claims about what was in that FISA warrant. And we're able to take that memo and we are able to look at what we have now of the FISA warrant, and I think with the two documents taken together, we can complete the jigsaw. And what it shows is that the FISA warrant was exactly as the Republicans, as Gowdy and Nunes and all the others on the House Intelligence Committee were saying. That FISA warrant, which permitted surveillance of Carter Page, was based largely, I'd say at least 70%, perhaps more than that, on the Christopher Steele's dossier. In other words, on research paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC for use in the election against Donald Trump. That was what that FISA warrant was based on. Now, we also know, because there's been information now come trickling out about the evidence that Lisa Page was giving to Congress. We discussed this recently in a video, in a program that you and I and Peter Lavelle did together about Lisa Page's testimony. We now know that Lisa Page and her lover, Peter Strzok, the person who was heading the investigation of the collusion allegations within the FBI, that they, in May 2017, at a time when all this surveillance and all these FISA warrants of Carter Page were going on, they had come to the decision that there was nothing there. In other words, that there was no collusion. Lisa Page has basically confirmed that that was what they meant in some of the text messages that they were sending to each other. So what we have is a FISA warrant based on Hillary Clinton's funded research and the two lead people within the FBI admitting that there was nothing there. Now, I think perhaps hoax is a strong word But I cannot believe any longer that people in the FBI had any real doubt at a very early stage that this investigation was an investigation into nothing, and they persisted in it because they were using it to do damage to Donald Trump and to help Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. And I think that has to be where all the evidence leads.
So Peter Strzok sent a text message to Lisa Page, and he said there's no big there in reference to the investigation into Trump-Russia collusion. Now, Peter Strzok also lied, and he lied about the Michael Isikoff situation. And it was a very, and I want you to get into that a little bit, Alexander, because it was a very deceptive game they were playing. It was like a double dipping. So the FBI leaked gave the dossier to Isikoff. Isikoff then publishes an article about the dossier, and then Strzok uses that article to investigate Carter Page. What the hell is going on?
I think it's slightly different from what you said, but I mean it's just as bad actually, because of course what happened was Christopher Steele gives his dossier to the FBI. The FBI say, "Wow, this is amazing stuff. We believe every word of it. We're going to start this investigation." They decide to take this dossier to the FISA court. That's the secret intelligence court that in secret grants warrants to the FBI to wiretap people who the FBI believes should be the subject of a counterintelligence investigation. So that dossier, which the FBI used, was Christopher Steele's dossier. And at the same time, the FBI was telling the FISA court that we have what looks like independent corroboration of what the dossier says, because there is this article by Isikoff, which is basically saying the same things as what the dossier is saying. Now, what the FBI didn't tell the court, it seems initially they didn't know it, but they very quickly found it out, was that Isikoff got his information from Christopher Steele. So Christopher Steele was providing his dossier to the FBI. Christopher Steele was talking to Isikoff. So in effect, the FBI were using the same information from Christopher Steele to corroborate what Christopher Steele was saying. And this was never apparently made clear to the FISA court, which as a result continued to think, or perhaps thought, or probably thought, that these two pieces of information were corroborating each other, and went on granting a further 3 FISA warrants to continue this surveillance on Carter Page. Can I just explain who Carter Page was? Because, of course, not everybody may know. Carter Page is a very strange character, a businessman, somebody who worked in the oil industry, who found himself in Moscow. There's some questions about how intelligent he actually was. Apparently, Russian intelligence decided that this man was an idiot. There's some suggestions that he was a fantasist. There's some suggestions that he was up to all sorts of things. What has been established is that he was not working for the Russians, but the Trump dossier that Christopher Steele put together seems to suggest that he was, because he did have a brief role in Donald Trump's campaign as a foreign policy advisor. So Christopher Steele alleged in his dossier, or rather the dossier that Christopher Steele put together, alleges that he was in some way the go-between between the campaign, the Trump campaign, and the Russians. And that was the basis upon which the FBI sought these surveillance warrants on him. Now, we now know enough to know that that was absolute nonsense. He was no sort of go-between. The Russians didn't take him seriously. He wasn't taken very seriously by the Trump campaign either. And the things that the Steele dossier says about him are demonstrably untrue. So, I mean, he was placed under surveillance without him being informed about it, because all this was done in secret, on the basis of the dossier paid by Hillary Clinton, which was seeking to obtain dirt on Donald Trump, and which, in fact, was completely unverified. So he's got a grievance, Donald Trump has a grievance, and the FBI, well, it looks very bad for them.
The FISA warrant also mentions that Carter Page, when the Isikoff article came out, it triggered Carter Page to then write a letter denying the allegations to Comey. And though that letter prompted Strzok to interview Page, and it kicked off a whole set of dominoes for Strzok to basically surveil everybody in Trump's circle. Was this done on purpose? Was this article given to Isikoff? Was this all a setup?
Well, I think there has to be a possibility. I mean, I don't know that it was. I don't think we yet know enough to be able to say definitely that it was. But look at the way it all the cards fell. I mean, what we see is that the surveillance, far from sort of dying down, actually seems to have been increasing. And of course, the one thing that the Isikoff article did do is not only did it help the FBI to get this FISA warrant on Carter Page, it also escalated publicly the whole collusion story by making it public. So, I mean, I think one has to ask oneself, what was going on? What did all of these people know? What were they saying to each other? And why, given that it should have been possible quite early to find out that there was no substance to this thing, was it going on? And why did it go on beyond May 2017, where we now know that Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were saying to each other that there's nothing there?
Now, to me, this sounds like Christopher Steele did a great job. He did exactly what he was paid to do and more. And it seemed like he got this dossier into the hands of the people he needed to get it to. He got it leaked when it needed to get leaked. And I think he got the ultimate goal of putting Trump under the microscope and putting his whole staff under the microscope, which to me, that sounds like what Christopher Steele, a spy, a trained intelligence officer, was paid to do. And my question is very simple, because no one seems to ask this question, and maybe you can answer it. Where the hell is Christopher Steele? How come he is not sitting in front of the Senate, in front of the House, explaining himself? How come he is not in U.S. custody? This guy is the center of everything, and no one is talking about him. They talk about him like he's some fantasy, like he's some spy. And now he's just sitting in London, just watching all this from afar. Where is he?
He's not quite watching all this from afar, because there are court cases against him. I mean, various people who've been named in this dossier have brought court cases. There's one going on in London, and I believe, I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe there's also one in the US. So he's having to defend these court cases. But you are absolutely right. He is the central figure in this story. You said that he did a good job. He did a brilliant job in a way. I mean, he created, as far as I can see, I mean, his dossier anyway, created the whole Trump collusion narrative. And of course, the other people who played a huge role in all of this were his employers, Fusion GPS, who are, right, of course, professionals at this kind of thing. I mean, that's why they commissioned Steele. They knew who Steele was. They knew the kind of things he does. They went to Steele. Steele provided the goods. He went to talk to the FBI, and somehow Fusion GPS themselves obviously spread the story through the media. I don't think there's any question about this. So clearly, Steele is the key figure. And can I just say something about Steele? If you remember, some months ago, the certain people within the Congress, Senators Grassley and Senators Lindsey Graham, were pointing out to the Justice Department that some of the things that Steele was doing seemed to suggest that he had acted, that he'd broken the law, that he'd committed criminal offences, that he'd perhaps lied to the FBI, which is a criminal offence in the United States, and that he might have done other things which were also criminal acts. And they asked the Justice Department to consider, at least think about, taking action against him. And we've heard nothing more about it since. So clearly, there is a desire on the part of some people to keep Christopher Steele as far away from the scene of the action as possible, which, by the way, to my mind, suggests that they don't have much belief in the truth of what he's saying. Because if they did believe in what he was saying, they wouldn't want to keep him away from the scene of the action. They'd want him at the scene of the action, where he would be repeating all the things which all these people would, in that case, believe to be true. So the fact that they're keeping him away, and that they seem to be, to some extent at least, well, if not protecting him, making sure that now preventing action being taken against him, I mean, that to my mind shows that they have little credibility, little faith in him, and that they're also have very little faith in the collusion narrative, which he basically spun.
So the document, as we said earlier, was heavily redacted. Do you think if Trump goes ahead and releases the warrant without any redactions in its entirety, do you think there's something more there? Or do you think that from basically the unredacted parts, we pretty much can derive to a conclusion as to what happened in regards to Carter Page and in the Trump-Russia collusion story?
I think the answer is that we can actually deduce quite a lot from what's been provided. As I said, we've got the GOP memo, we've got the Republican memo from some months ago, and we can put the two together and we can get a reasonably complete and convincing picture about what happened. There may be a lot more pieces of this jigsaw to fit in, but I think we've got the general outline. Having said that, I think it's sooner or later, as I said, I come back to this, if the Republicans hold on to the House in November, which is starting to look increasingly likely. The last opinion poll I saw just before we started this program suggests that Donald Trump has more support amongst Republicans than any Republican president has done, since George W. Bush immediately after 9/11. So, I mean, his popularity is growing. If the Republicans hold on to the House, I think we will see more and more demands for more of this evidence to come out. Donald Trump is already talking about the need to do away with these redactions. I read somewhere that Nunes thinks that only 5% of the redactions that have happened are actually necessary to protect U.S. security. So I think we will see more and more of this. And as I said, I think I think we talked about it like the other day. You know, it's the dike is breaking, and more of this is going to pour out.
So yesterday or actually I think it was over the weekend, Clapper did a telephone interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper. And James Clapper pretty much admitted, actually he definitely admitted, that President Obama tasked the intelligence, his intelligence agencies, since he was the head of all the intelligence agencies, he tasked them to further investigate Carter Page and to investigate pretty much this whole line of direction with Trump-Russia collusion. So Clapper ratted out Obama in a way. You mentioned just before, you mentioned five minutes ago that Steele lied to the FBI or may have lied to the FBI, and that is a criminal offense. That is a felony. We know that Michael Flynn, we know Paul Manafort, we know these guys are currently, Papadopoulos, these guys are currently undergoing problems with the FBI because supposedly they lied to the FBI. Meanwhile, nothing's happened to Steele, nothing's happened to Strzok. We got the Lisa Page testimony. Nothing's happened to Comey. Nothing's happened to McCabe. Nothing happened to Clinton, Susan Rice, none of these people. Can you explain? And we also know that Tony Podesta, the brother of John Podesta, got immunity while Manafort is sitting in prison. Alexander, can you explain who the hell is going to get prosecuted from all of these guys that have been up to all this no good?
Well,
who is going to take the fall? Brennan, Clapper, all all of these guys struck. When are we going to start seeing some punishment for the crimes they committed?
Right.
And who do you think we might see it from?
Right, okay. Well, I mean, so long as the investigation is being conducted in the way that it has been up to now, so long as Robert Mueller is special counsel running this investigation, and the investigation is run from the Justice Department and from the FBI, and we've got to remember that Robert Mueller is a friend of James Comey and is the former director of the FBI. So long as all these things are going on, we are not going to see any action being taken against those people. I mean, if you go back to an article I wrote back in March 2017, I said that one of the whole point about Russiagate is to draw attention away from the things that were really going on in the 2016 election, which was all these, these wiretaps or these extraordinary actions of surveillance during the election of the Trump campaign that it appears was authorized by the Obama administration and possibly by the Obama White House. Now, what needs to happen is we need to break through that. We need to put this Russiagate thing, you called it a hoax at the start of the program. I mean, diversion might be perhaps the better word. We've got to put all that to one side, and then we've got to get somebody, and it has to be someone from outside, a special counsel brought in, probably, I think, a retired judge, or perhaps even a Supreme Court justice, to look into what was going on in the Justice Department and the FBI, and to go through all the files and to follow all the leads, which could very well lead to the Obama White House and beyond, and to investigate and prosecute this properly. And because it's quite clear to me that the Justice Department and the FBI won't do it because it would involve them investigating themselves. The problem is there is massive opposition within the Justice Department, within the FBI, within the deep state, within the media, which is heavily implicated in all of this, within the Democratic Party, to any of that happening. If we get a special counsel appointed, then all bets are off, and we could very well see a very powerful investigation beginning to take off and prosecutions following. But we have to break through this Russiagate thing first. And I'm afraid, as I said, that is proving hard work. But, at one point, when I wrote that article in March 2017, I never thought we would get to the point that we have. So, maybe it will happen.
Finally, Alexander, do you think when all is said and done, and this Trump-Russia collusion thing does fade away or settle, do you think Trump will be vindicated?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, it seems to me that it can only have one of two outcomes. Outcome one, Mueller delivers a report. He says the Russians hacked the DNC, but that there was no collusion. I don't think even Mueller any longer believes he can prove collusion. I think Trump will be vindicated by that, and he will be in a stronger position. Possibility two is that we will see what I just discussed happening, which is that we're going to see a further investigation into the FBI, into the Justice Department, and into all of these people. Then, Trump will not just be vindicated, but we will quite possibly see a massive crisis in the political system in the United States, as all the people who were involved in, let's call it a conspiracy against Donald Trump. Conspiracies might have all kinds of motives, and some of the people involved might at one time have believed in elements of the conspiracy, but if you put it all together, it was a conspiracy. In that situation, then I don't think Trump will just be vindicated. I think he will be in a very much stronger position than just vindicated. I think he will be able to say, I was the president who some people wanted to overthrow, even though I won fairly a constitutional election. And I have to say straightforwardly, the United States has never in its history been in that situation. And I find it very difficult to read what the effects would be. But I suspect they would be massive.
It's incredible. Incredible. This whole thing is incredible. It leaves me speechless because the whole thing is incredible. I've just said that word 3 times, but there's so much there, and there's so much to digest. And I wonder, Alexander, I have a hard time keeping up with all of this stuff. How does this play out to the wider public that isn't reading this on a daily basis? Right. Is it just too much?
I think to a surprising degree, actually, the Republican base has at least got the sense of this. Obviously, they don't understand. They don't follow all the details. And I mean, who does? A tiny minority of people are following it closely. There's myself, there's yourself, there's people like Solomon, who writes at The Hill. There's people like Byron York, who writes at the Washington Examiner. There's a few, small number of people who are generally on top of this. But to a surprising extent, an awful lot of people have got a feel for this thing, which is actually, quite a good one. And one has to give credit to the American people, or at least to a part of the American people, that they've been able to suss this one out so well. But having said that, as I say, if the dam finally and truly bursts and all of this comes out into the open, then, as I said, there'll never be anything like it. The mind reels, actually. And we were talking a little while ago in another program about the sort of furious reaction to the Trump-Putin summit. I think partly that is all that hysteria that we saw then is driven by fear, because they are frightened. A lot of people are very frightened of what may eventually come out. People like Clapper, people like Brennan, with all their wild talk of treason and all the rest. And it is often a sign of that people become very angry when they're actually very frightened. And I suspect that there are quite a lot of frightened people out there because they sense the abyss that is starting to open up beneath them. And where this is going to leave the American people and the American political system, I just don't know. But we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I sense the noose is tightening on guys like Brennan and Clapper and Straka. You can feel it. You can feel it. Yeah. It's inexorable. And of course, the trouble is that they've left the traces everywhere because, as I said, they never expected that this would get this far. I think that was one of the things that they never imagined. And let's give the US its due. It's surprising that it's got this far, and it speaks very highly, as I said, of some people within the political system. We talked about people like Gowdy, people like Nunes, but others too. That they've managed to take it as far as this. And it speaks very highly of the American people that they've, as I said, so many of them have managed to figure it out. So, as I said, it is inexorable, and we will see whether it gets there. But, it's inexorable. It is real. The collusion narrative is not real. This one is. Yeah, I agree with you. And even when you read the comments in a lot of the videos we do on this subject, you can see that a lot of people that view our shows have a very good feel, and they have a good understanding for the bad stuff that was taking place amongst all these DC swamp creatures, and they know what's going on. I think that's pretty impressive.
It is. It's very impressive. And I should say something. It also is partly the reason why Donald Trump won the election in the first place. An awful lot of people in the US were already sensing that there's something seriously wrong with their political system. So, it's pretty impressive. As I said, the American people, the so-called deplorables, it turns out, far from being deplorable, are actually pretty shrewd.
Yeah, very good. And we'll leave it on that point. Very good analysis. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop. Help support the Duran. Buy a t-shirt. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Till next time, take care.